Well, thank you for joining me today to help us document some of your history. So I thought to start off with, I'd have you introduce yourself, kind of tell us where you're from and how you got started in the custom business.
Yeah, I'm Ken Vieth, and I'm with the Vieth Brothers Custom Harvesting. We got started actually in 1976 with an old combine that I had boys rebuild, and I made them rebuild it from scratch, and they did, which surprised me.
Uh-huh.
And then in 1979, they bought one John Deere 7720, and I went ahead and bought another one and gave it to them, and they got it started from there. And of course, at that time, cutting was typically going for like $10 an acre.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never forget the first job we had. We had two trucks, gasoline, and one of them got ruined at the elevator, and the other one, tire blew out, and a young kid put in a ditch and ruined the frame, and I had to go look for a truck. And I'll never forget a gentleman by Perry Hoffman from South Dakota loaned me a truck.
Mm-hmm.
And it just points out I think the credibility of the harvesters. They watch out for each other. And I'll never forget, Perry asked my son if he knew how to drive a diesel truck, and he'd never been in one in his life.
Right.
And he looked at him and said, "You bet you I know how to drive it," because he knew his livelihood depended on it. So that was our experience the first year, and it was kind of terrifying, really. And I'll never forget, the dealer had told my son that the 7720, you could run through the field about 6 miles an hour in heavy weight, no problem. And he tried that, and I'll never forget, after about 6 hours of pocket knives and saw blades, we finally got all that jam out of the machine. And but it was a learning process, and that's kind of how we got started in it. And of course, I was in the postal office at the time, and I'd take vacation time to go with them to come give them a little guidance and a little help. And after that, in the first year, we went as far as Kansas.
Okay.
And we were afraid to go any further because we didn't have much money.
Mm-hmm.
And but we got started and picked a corn job up that fall, and everything worked out. In the end of the first year, everything was in the black instead of the red. So that was great. That's how we got started.
Okay. Talk about how, kind of continuing on from there, what was your rest of the...
Oh, okay. Kind of continuing on from there, we started growing all slowly. I think the second year we may have kept 2 combines, and the next year we decided to jump to the big things, the 8820s. And again, I'd take vacation time on and make sure that they were headed the right direction. And it just happened that year, my youngest son went to Montana about maybe 6 weeks before the harvest was ready up there. And we ran across a gentleman had a rather large crop, and he told me, he said, he had somebody from Texas lined up. He said, if he doesn't show up, I'll get a hold of him. Well, it sure enough, it happened. The guy did not show up.
Mm-hmm.
And we ended up getting that job, and of course we've built on it, and today it's one of the best jobs that we've got on our whole run, roughly a 10,000 acre job.
Wow.
And I'll never forget, one year, I guess it's the 3rd year we had that job, the farmer came to us and told us that he had a problem. He said, I'd like for you guys to run a little late tonight. So why is that? He said, well, there's supposed to be a storm coming in tomorrow. And by that time we had grown to 5 machines, and I believe they were still 8820s. Yeah, they were, because the 9600 didn't come out until, I believe it was 89. And so he asked us if we could run late, and we said, well, sure, we'll do that, as long as the elevator stays open. He said, well, I've got my own elevator. And we ran all night. His wife brought some food out about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my.
And we had a little trouble staying awake, but we did. We got that crop out by about 11 o'clock the next morning. We were finished. At 2 o'clock, his stubble was mowed to the ground.
Wow.
And we have that job yet today. And the reason we have it today is we do what we say we're gonna do. We show up on time. We cut it just like it'd be our own. And that's why today we've got the big job in Hardin, Montana.
Okay.
And if a harvester does that, the good Lord will bless you, and you'll go ahead and keep that kind of job forever. And keep in mind that the farmer is the one that pays the bill on that combine. And you're up there kind of as a custodian of the machine and so on, and hopefully at the end of the year you're in the black, you know.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how we grew. And here a few years ago we had 11 John Deeres and had enough work to keep them all busy. Of course, since then things have got a little tighter, where the acreage is not there anymore. And then my youngest son had a health problem, and he got out of the combine business and went into other work. And my oldest son is still in the business, and his grandson got real interested in cotton, and we do a lot of cotton harvesting now.
Okay.
The cotton variety and the weather changes and so on. There's cotton here, and as you well know, all the way into Kansas.
Yep.
And but we run 3 cotton picker balers, and we run 2 strippers, and it has treated us real well. We're very, very pleased with that. And we're down to 6 John Deeres now, and we'll probably stay at that level for the years ahead.
Do you have any memories from like going to the same stops over and over, like Hardin, Montana? Are there memories that you can think of that come to mind?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of them. The good and bad. Some of the bad memories that I had wasn't at Hardin, but we learned real fast that if you buy some equipment, particularly used equipment, like a combine trailer, you better check it thoroughly. Because we typically traded every year up to the past few years, and we'd go get our own machines from John Deere. And coming back from John Deere at Guyman, Oklahoma, they ran 3 of them back at that time, and my son was in the back machine, or back truck, and he noticed the one in front of him was veering a little bit, and all at once he noticed the combine was detached from the truck.
Oh my.
And that creates a lot of problems, particularly if you're on a U.S. highway or anywhere. Well, what had happened, we bought that combine trailer, and the idiot that sold it, and the idiot, I guess, that bought it, a very poor weld, and where there should have been a weld, he had went over it with a caulk gun, and it looked real nice, but it wasn't very good, and that broke. Here's a brand new combine, and I'll never forget, my son said it went almost to the tip over position and finally fell back. And when it did, he noticed the whole thing moved probably about 12 inches, and that combine was totaled.
Wow.
And that created a severe problem. But again, I think one of the most interesting one was probably in corn. I personally enjoy cutting corn myself. We used to cut a lot of food corn when we had irrigation water south of Amarillo. And one of the things that really made me happy to see the wet corn go into the bin was every one of them looked like a pearl. And I'll never forget, when I was in the service, I was in Libya, and I remember seeing little kids, maybe two and a half or three, in diapers, running around turning trash cans over to get food.
Oh, wow.
And that had a real deep impression on me. And I said, somewhere, somehow in this world, maybe I could do something. So when we got into the food corn, I knew that every bit of that was consumed eventually by some human being. And that's probably one of the most gratifying things out there for me. And then the other thing that I cherish immensely, and that is the farmers. The people we cut for are the grassroots of America. They're the people that produce the grain, not only for us, but for the world. And I'm so impressed with the people that we harvest for. Genuine red, white, and blue Americans. And they're struggling because the price of grain is way down. And we just need to improve our marketing situation. But it's something I think that, at least to me, at my age of 90, I guarantee you one thing, it's impressive to see what the farmers in this country do for our country.
We can go ahead and kind of talk about what did a normal harvest run look like for you? You kind of mentioned you start off in the south, go to Montana.
Yeah, our normal harvest run starts in May. We go down to South Texas, and then we go from there to Kroll. The first man we ever cut for, we still cut for, and I'm really proud of that. He's cut down on acreage, and he kind of does this as a sideline. And I'll never forget how we got that first job. My wife and I were looking. And I imagine we got that day probably 50 no's and probably maybe 10 maybes. And the last people we talked to, I'll never forget, the guy's name is John Wayne. And John Wayne has a handshake like a fish. It doesn't move, the hand. But he wasn't there, and his parents talked to us, and then I convinced them that, we ought to be their cutter. And he said, his wife said that, yeah, we've got about 2,000 acres, and our son John is in Dallas looking for a wife. And that's true. And he has that wife yet today. But we cut for him, and of course build up a reputation. And then from there, of course, we come to Amarillo, and Amarillo is a maybe. Like last year, with drought, and as well as that Kroll wiped us out last year. Everything was destroyed by the drought. But the old saying, when the tough gets out there, the tough get going. And we found other jobs. It wasn't real good jobs, but we found some other jobs, and we'd let them know, hey, we're here 1 year, and that was okay. But at any rate, from there, we typically go to up to Plains, Kansas, and not a big job, but a farmer that loves us, and we love him. And then our big job is in Tribune, and we usually cut up there all for, in a neighborhood of 5,000 to 6,000 acres of wheat. And then in the fall of the year, almost the same thing in milo and corn. And then from there, we go to Rogan, Colorado. And from Rogan, we hightail it to Hardin, Montana. And after Hardin, we go over to Stanley and Washburn, North Dakota. And then it's back to Texas. We used to do a lot of corn, and with the loss of a lot of our irrigation water, that is certainly cut back immensely. And typically at that time, we'll start on the milo, and shortly thereafter, we're tied up in the cotton business pretty heavy. And the wonderful thing about cotton is number one, you're guaranteed so many acres and so on, and it's not as near as competitive as the grain harvest. And some of it's just east of Amarillo that we cut or strip. Then there's stripper balers. We got 2 stripper balers and 3 picker balers, and there's a big difference as well as cost. The picker balers are very, very expensive, in the tune of $750,000, $800,000. And my grandson primarily does that, and he starts down around Harlingen in the valley, Rio Grande Valley, and then around the Corpus area, and then from there he hightails it to Arkansas. And the gentleman there has plenty of cotton.
Yeah.
He has 3 gins, but he has 80,000 acres of cotton that he controls.
Wow.
And the wonderful thing about the cotton end of it is you don't have to have that number of people. And you know, we usually hire, we have, I guess, for 15 years, South Africans.
Okay.
And they work out quite well for us. But on the cotton end of it, we can get by with, like, say, if you run 3 pickers, you need about 4 people. And that's a pleasant thing. The only thing about the cotton is the expense of the machine and the fuel. You know, it's not uncommon to use 350, 400 gallons of diesel per day per machine.
Wow.
So you got to know what you're doing, and of course those machines have got so many functions going on at one time. Whoever runs them had better know a little bit about machinery.
Yeah.
Much more complicated than a combine tractor.
Can you remember the cost of your first combine?
Remember what, ma'am?
Do you remember how much you paid for your
Oh
first
yeah,
combine?
very, very definitely. The first combine we bought, brand spanking new, was $38,000. And today you can't quite buy them for that.
No,
But,
probably not.
Yeah, and well, I say the first one I bought was that old John Deere 95
that's
that wouldn't
right.
even run. I think I gave $1,000 for it. Probably spent another $5,000 or $6,000 fixing it. But that was a good teaching device, a good learning device for my sons.
Okay.
And but today I think they pay a little bit more than $38,000 per combine.
Probably so. Talk about maybe the year that you joined the U.S. Custom Harvester Organization.
I joined the U.S. Custom Harvester when it first started.
Right.
I was at the first meeting. We had about 20 or 25 people in a small building in Canyon, Texas. And Mr. J.L. Pettit was leading the group, and of course we elected him as president that night. And he stuck with it for 5 years, and of course the organization started to grow.
Yeah.
And it wasn't growing like we wanted it to, and JL took a trip up to North Dakota and Nebraska and Oklahoma and so on, and he came back elated because he had some people in North Dakota and South Dakota that were very interested in getting it going. And it just kept growing from there. And we had some tough times in the initial stage of it, and I'll tell you how tough it got. Probably after about 8 or 10 years, the group had enough trust in me that they put me on the board of directors. And my forte was one thing. I've always believed in safety. When I was in the Air Force, I was on accident review board, and I started the first jet engine accident investigation school for the Air Force. And then they sent me to OSHA training and all that, and I felt that some of those things that rubbed off, maybe I could take and help maybe just one person from being injured or unfortunately a fatality in the combine operation. It's a dangerous operation, but it's not if you take and get real down to grassroots safety. And that's what I did. I took 2 weeks and went all over the wheat belt and so on, a 8-day or 8-hour training session for each one. And that was joyful.
Mm-hmm.
I got to meet some of the most congruent people in the Harvest organization, and I cherish that yet today. And I had a little bit to do with having the highway patrolmen here in Texas. We call them DPS, Department of Public Safety, and that really fostered and growed. And I'll never forget, for a long time we had a member from Kansas that was two of the highway patrolmen, and one of them served as our auctioneer. And he was fabulous, had a lot of jokes and so on. He even had the colonel in charge of the highway patrolmen in Kansas at then. And I'll never forget, at the auction, we sold his coat one night.
Oh, really?
Of course, we let him have it back, but it was a funny gesture. But those are some of the things that I remember. And of course, in the older days, when we finally started having an auction, you know, if we had $10,000 or $15,000 auction, boy, we'd hit a home run. And I think tonight, or last night, I think we might have beat that.
Yeah, probably so. What would you say you've gained by being a member and by being a part of this organization?
Well, being a member of this organization, to me, is an honor.
Mm-hmm.
It's a privilege. And when I was on the board of directors, I tried to do everything I could to help the organization. And at that time, we had a lady at Louis' House, was the executive secretary, or whatever she was called. I think that was it. And of course, it was headquartered down at Thule at that time. And she called me one day, and she said, "Ken, you got to get down here. I need to show you a building." And we were renting a small place at that time.
Right.
And this was a building that had been occupied by a credit union. And she said, "You need to look at it. We can buy it." I said, "How much?" She said, "We can get it for $30,000, almost 5,000 square feet." And I went down and looked at it. I said, "Well, I'm on the board of directors, and I'm going to bring it up to the board, and I'm going to recommend that we buy this building and move out where you're at, because it was too small anyhow." And I told her, "If they don't do it, I'll buy it," because at that time I had rental houses here in Amarillo, and I didn't really want to get another one, but that was a steal. At any rate, to make a long story short, we moved in there and occupied it for about 5 years. And then we sold that building for $180,000.
Wow.
So I was proud that that little contribution that I made worked out good for the harvesters. But being a member of this organization is an honor, because you're associated with some of the finest people, in my opinion, in the country. They're all trying to take and provide a service for our customer. They enjoy what they're doing. It's a tremendous challenge, but they're there to meet that challenge, and you can't be anything but happy when you're in an organization that provides a benefit to the people in the world. And that's what the harvesters are all about. They watch out for each other. And going back to what I said about Perry Hoffman, we were out of business. You know, we had 2 trucks that were damaged. I mean, out of service, total. And here, Perry stepped forward and let us use one of his trucks. You can't get any better than that.
Yeah. What would you say you've loved about being a harvester? What's your favorite part, or something you just really enjoyed?
Oh, one of the favorite parts, I guess, is being an idiot. Some of the stuff that I've bought at the harvester meeting. We had a meeting in Las Vegas, some years back, and there was a quilt there, and my wife wanted that. Because we had a patch, Vieth Brothers on it, and she wanted that real bad. Case IH had a patch on there, and they wanted that quilt. And not like last night, but back in those days, if you gave over $800 or $900 for a quilt, you were crazy. I paid $2,200 for that sucker. And guess what?
What?
It got folded up, put in a drawer, and my wife has not taken that quilt out since.
I think that's all about what I have, unless you have some like old harvest stories that you'd like to share
Oh,
that you can think of.
yeah, I got one. It happened right here in Amarillo. We were running 8820s at that time, and there was a small field that now is occupied by Walmart here in Amarillo. And I set these three guys up there, told them where it was at and everything. And I figured to take the three machines probably maybe an hour, hour and a half to get it completed. And I had something that happened and I was tied up, and I went up there about 2 hours later, and I noticed they're in the field, and I said, my goodness, why is it taking so long? Lo and behold, they were in the wrong field. Okay, now, that was part of the problem, but as I pulled up, there's a guy pulled up behind me.
Uh-oh.
He looked at me, he said, are those your combines? Yeah. Do you realize that you're in the wrong field? And my heart sank. He said, by the way, that's experimental wheat.
Oh no.
The next thing he said, I'm a lawyer. Oh my God. I wanted to be somewhere else in a hurry. And I said, well, it's experimental wheat. What are you going to do with it? Oh, it's going to be for seed. And he was having a blast. I'm sitting there in misery. And he told me, he said, you know, I'm going to sell that wheat for about $25. And of course, we'd already hauled some to the elevator.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, here I go bankrupt in a hurry, you know. And he finally ended up, I told him, I said, we'll cut it and haul it for nothing. He looked at me, he said, well, that's good. He said, I've got some other wheat and I'll just let you cut the whole section for nothing. And he was kind of pulling my leg, but I'll guarantee you, that got my attention.
I bet.
Yeah. But I had a lot of experiences that were positive.
Yeah.
So all those positive can make up for that negative, you know. And we had some combines. Fortunately, we never did burn one to the ground, but we had some engine problems when, there was a period where they had some engines that weren't quite right. That was a challenge. But the others, we had some problems on the road with, I'll never forget one we had in Wyoming. We had a permit and everything going down the highway, and at that time we were running, I guess, 8 machines, and my son was leading, and once he got on the radio, he said, hey, everybody stop right now. What happened, the highway that was under construction, it started narrowing down. We couldn't get through.
Oh no.
We had traffic blocked for probably 2 miles. Needless to say, the highway patrolman came up and everything, said, hey, we got a permit. Well, somehow they didn't communicate. And of course, they gave us a big ticket, and even though we didn't deserve it, and my son had enough gumption, he went ahead and called. He kept calling and calling, finally got to the lieutenant governor, and he explained to him what happened. He said, I'll call you back, I'll get in contact with you. And they dismissed that ticket. But what happened, the construction crew came up there and they had to remove these concrete barriers so we could get through. We couldn't back up with those machines. And but I imagine some construction company had some words with the state officials because somebody didn't communicate.
Uh-huh.
But that's kind of the story I've got behind, and I don't mind telling you, I'm proud of the fact that we have an organization like we have. And I asked somebody last night how many people were in attendance, and somebody told me it's 1,030 there last night.
Wow. Compared to the
That
30 to...
Yeah, that compares quite well. And I'm tickled to death that we have expanded. We're no longer just combines.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a lot of in-slich people. And there's an avenue that's open. We've got a lot of people that's into cotton business now. And I would encourage our organization to reach out and get that end of it growing. Because that membership could grow, I would say, probably 300 or 400 people quite rapidly. But, and it's delightful to have a person like you to talk to.
Well, good deal. Well, if that's all you have,
That's all I got.
I just wanted to thank you for
Well, thank you very much.
being here today.